You are a fraud. This check is worthless. What? No, wait, please.
Sir, please forgive my manager. It is an honor to have you here.
The sound of paper tearing sliced through the bank lobby like a scream. Mia flinched so hard she dropped her stuffed rabbit. And Daniel Reyes just stood there, frozen, as the woman behind the polished marble desk ripped his $5 million check into 4 pieces and let them fall at his boots like trash. "I said," the bank manager snapped, loud enough for every person in line to hear, "we do not tolerate fraud in this branch." For a second, nobody moved. The air conditioning hummed. A toddler somewhere near the front doors started crying. A man in a gray suit lowered his phone just enough to stare. Daniel looked down at the scraps. His name was still visible on one piece, the amount on another. $5 million. On the third piece, there was a small blue stain where his daughter had touched it with her shaking hand. "Miss, please," Daniel said, his voice rough, exhausted. "That check is real." The manager gave a short, disgusted laugh. "Of course it is." Mia tugged at his sleeve. "Dad?" He didn't look at her, because if he looked at her, he might break. If stories like this get under your skin, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from before we go any further. Because this one doesn't just hurt, it changes everything before it ends. Daniel took one breath, then another. He wore work boots dusted white from drywall. His flannel was faded at the elbows. There was a stain near his cuff from strawberry medicine Mia hated taking. He knew what he looked like standing under those bright chandelier lights, surrounded by people with pressed jackets and expensive watches. He looked like somebody who didn't belong there. But he also looked like a man who hadn't slept in 3 nights. "I called ahead," he said. "I was told to ask for the branch manager personally. I brought ID, the estate documents, the verification letter, everything." The woman folded her arms. Her name tag read Vanessa Hale. Not Miss, not Ma'am. Vanessa. And Daniel noticed something then that he hadn't before. Her last name. Hale. His stomach tightened. Vanessa leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice in a way that somehow made it crueler. "Do you think I don't know what this is? A desperate man walks in with a fake check, a sad story, and a kid for sympathy." Mia's fingers closed around his hands so tightly her nails dug into his skin. "It's not fake," Daniel said. Vanessa looked at Mia and smiled the kind of smile that isn't a smile at all. "Sweetheart, your father is making a very bad decision right now." Daniel's head came up instantly. "Do not talk to my daughter." Every conversation in the lobby stopped. Vanessa straightened. "Then perhaps don't bring her into criminal situations." "Criminal?" Mia whispered. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" Daniel knelt so fast his knee hit the marble floor. "No, baby. No. Look at me." His voice cracked, and that almost hurt more than anything. "You are not in trouble. You hear me? None of this is because of you." She nodded, but her bottom lip trembled. Mia was 8 years old, with 2 thin wrists and skin that had gone pale over the last year. Her pink beanie covered the place where her hair had started falling out in soft little pieces after the first round of treatment. She used to hate that hat. Now she wore it even indoors. Daniel rose slowly. "I need those pieces back." Vanessa gave him a flat look. "I've already contacted security." That was when the elevator doors opened. A man in a navy overcoat stepped out, followed by 2 assistants and a younger employee carrying a leather folder. He looked like the kind of man whose schedule decided other people's futures. Silver at the temples, sharp posture. The whole lobby shifted when he entered, as if everyone recognized power before they recognized the face. Vanessa turned immediately, her voice suddenly polished. "Mr. Whitmore, I didn't know you were coming by this morning." He barely glanced at her. His eyes were locked on Daniel. He stopped walking. For one strange second, the older man looked almost shocked. Then something deeper crossed his face. Recognition. Respect. Maybe even shame. He stepped forward. Vanessa smiled nervously. "We're just handling an attempted fraud issue." "Sir," the man said, cutting straight past her. Not to a client in a tailored suit. To Daniel. The word landed in the lobby like a dropped glass. Vanessa's face drained of color. Mr. Whitmore looked down at the torn check pieces, then back at Daniel, and there was disbelief in his voice now. "What happened here?" Nobody answered. So Daniel did. "Your manager destroyed my check," he said quietly. "And my daughter's surgery deposit is due by 5. The silence that followed felt alive. Mr. Whitmore's jaw tightened. "Vanessa, my office. Now." Vanessa swallowed. "Sir, I can explain." "You will," he said, still looking at Daniel. "After you pick those pieces off the floor." People started pretending not to watch. Nobody fooled anyone. Mia leaned against Daniel's side. "Dad, who is he?" Daniel stared at Whitmore for a beat too long. "Someone I knew a long time ago," he said. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was a lot uglier than that. 10 years earlier, before the hollow cheeks and overdue notices and late-night fevers, Daniel Reyes had worn a uniform every day. Not a tailored one, not clean, not expensive, but one men followed when things got loud and dark and final. Back then, Jonathan Whitmore had not been Mr. Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore National. He'd been Johnny, 23 years old, fresh out of business school, doing a summer finance program in a war zone because his powerful father believed real leadership came from proximity to danger, so long as it happened to other people first. Johnny had smiled too much, talked too fast, and nearly gotten himself killed on Daniel's watch. Twice. The third time, Daniel had dragged him out of a burning vehicle with blood pouring down his own arm and Johnny screaming that he couldn't feel his legs. Daniel remembered kneeling in the dirt, pressing both hands into the wound, telling the terrified rich kid to keep his eyes open. "Look at me," he'd said. Johnny had sobbed, "Don't let me die." Daniel didn't. Now that same kid stood in a luxury bank, staring at Daniel like a ghost had walked through the front doors carrying a sick little girl. Whitmore led them into a private office upstairs while someone from operations was already being shouted at through an open phone line. "I want imaging on every camera angle in that lobby," Whitmore barked. "And get legal down here, now." Vanessa stood near the glass wall, rigid and pale, her manicured hands shaking. Daniel sat Mia on a leather couch. She looked too small against all that expensive furniture. Whitmore crouched in front of her. "Hi, Mia. I'm Jonathan." She nodded cautiously. "I'm going to help your dad fix something," he said. "My surgery?" she asked. Something in his face shifted. "Yes." Vanessa finally found her voice. "With respect, Mr. Whitmore, we don't even know that child's story is true." Daniel turned toward her so slowly it frightened even him. Whitmore stood. "You tore up a verified cashier's check issued by our own private settlements division." Vanessa blinked. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Whitmore snapped. Because I just verified the serial personally. The room went still again. Daniel felt Mia's small hand slip into his. Whitmore looked at Vanessa with cold disbelief. So let me try to understand what kind of judgment led you to humiliate a customer in public, frighten his daughter, accuse him of a felony, and destroy valid negotiable property. Vanessa's chin lifted a fraction. I acted on information indicating Mr. Reyes might not be the lawful beneficiary. Daniel stared at her. What information? She hesitated. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. Answer him. Vanessa swallowed. A call came in this morning from Victor Hale. Daniel went cold. Mia looked up at him. Grandpa Victor? He forced his voice steady. Yeah, baby. Whitmore looked between them. Who is Victor Hale? Daniel laughed once, but there was no humor in it. My late wife's father. Vanessa straightened, as if that justified everything. Mr. Hale stated there was a pending guardianship petition and that Mr. Reyes might attempt to access funds belonging to the child's trust. Whitmore stared at her. So you destroyed a check because a wealthy client warned you about his son-in-law's haircut? I was protecting the bank. No, Daniel said quietly. You were protecting family. Vanessa's eyes flicked to him. And that was when Whitmore understood. Hale. Same last name. His gaze sharpened. Is Victor Hale related to you? Vanessa said nothing. Vanessa. He's my father. Mia shrank into Daniel's side. Of course he was. Of course the woman who tore up the check had looked at him with the same polished contempt Victor Hale had worn at Daniel's wedding. Not contempt. Disgust. The kind rich families saved for the people they thought had touched their blood by accident. Daniel's wife, Elena, had once told him there were two versions of the Hale family. The one that donated hospital wings and smiled for magazines, and the one that cut people out without blinking. She'd chosen him anyway. Then she died anyway. And now her family wanted what was left. Whitmore turned away, pressing a hand to his mouth as if restraining something furious. Get compliance in here, and patch legal through the second they arrive. Vanessa's voice hardened. There is a guardianship petition. Dad filed it this morning. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. You did this on purpose. She looked at him directly. I did what someone should have done a long time ago. Whitmore spun back. Enough! But Daniel already knew. Victor Hale hadn't just wanted to delay the money. He wanted Daniel to miss the deposit deadline. Because the $5 million wasn't just money. It was the last thing Elena had left behind. 6 months earlier, Daniel had discovered a sealed packet in a fireproof box hidden at the back of their closet. Inside were letters, legal documents, and an unsigned photograph of Elena laughing in the kitchen with flour on her cheek and Mia on her hip. He found the packet the same night the hospital told him Mia's treatment had to change. Cheaper options were gone. Time was gone. Hope, the simple kind, was gone too. In the packet, Elena explained everything. Years before she met Daniel, her father had transferred ownership of several undeveloped acres near the edge of the city into her name for tax reasons. He forgot about it, or never thought she'd use it. Elena kept it quiet because every time her father gave something, he expected to keep owning it through guilt. After Elena died, the land should have passed to Mia in trust, but Elena had changed the structure before her death. If Mia ever needed life-saving medical care before adulthood, Daniel, as sole guardian, had full authority to liquidate the asset immediately. No board, no Hale approval, no Victor. The land had just been sold to a hospital network expanding into pediatric research. $5 million. Enough to save Mia. Enough to enrage the family that thought control was love. Whitmore listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, the CEO looked like he hadn't breathed in a while. "That's one version," Vanessa said. Daniel turned to her. "You think I stole from my own daughter?" "I think," Vanessa said carefully, "my father believes Elena never intended for you to control that much money." For a moment, Daniel couldn't speak. Then he laughed again, softer this time. "Your sister died with cracked hands because she worked freelance design jobs at night while your father ate dinner under a painting worth more than our house." His voice sharpened. "She watched Mia throw up from treatment and still refused to ask him for help because she knew every dollar would come with a chain attached to it. So don't stand there and tell me what Elena intended." Vanessa's eyes flickered. There it was. Not guilt. Recognition. She knew. She just didn't care enough to stop. Mia tugged his sleeve. "Dad, am I making everyone fight?" That almost broke him. He dropped to his knees and took her face gently in both hands. "No. No, sweetheart. Listen to me. None of this is because of you. Adults were already broken before you got here." She searched his face with those huge, frightened eyes that looked exactly like her mother's. "Are we still doing the hospital today?" Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because the truth was brutal. The original check could be reissued, yes, but not before end of business. And the hospital required the transfer confirmation by 5 to hold the surgical team scheduled for dawn. Without it, Mia lost the slot. Another month, maybe more. Her doctor had already stopped saying things like, "We should be fine." Now he said things like, "We can't afford delays." Whitmore checked his watch, then picked up the phone. "Get me Treasury. I want an emergency bridge authorization in the amount of $1 million secured against the estate disbursement." Vanessa stared at him. "You can't do that without underwriting review." Whitmore looked at her with exhausted contempt. "Watch me." She stepped forward. "The board will never approve it, especially with a guardianship filing." "I'm not asking the board." Daniel rose. "Jonathan." Whitmore held up a hand. "You pulled me out of a burning truck. That was 10 years ago. And I've had 10 years to repay a debt," Whitmore said. "Let me start." Daniel went quiet. But suspense doesn't care when you finally catch one breath. It takes the next one, too. Because 15 minutes later, legal walked in. And they brought worse news. Victor Hale hadn't just filed for emergency guardianship. He'd filed to freeze all medical disbursements pending a fitness review. Mia heard the word freeze and looked terrified. Daniel didn't hear anything else after fitness. Not for a few seconds. Not until the attorney, a woman with careful eyes and a gray folder, said, "He attached supporting exhibits." "What exhibits?" Daniel asked. The attorney hesitated. Whitmore took the folder, scanned 2 pages, and swore under his breath. Daniel reached for it. Inside were photographs. Him asleep in a plastic hospital chair. Him arguing with an insurance representative outside oncology. Him carrying Mia out of a pharmacy at midnight after she'd vomited on his shirt. And one from the worst night of all. Daniel sitting on the curb outside the emergency entrance, head in his hands, shoulders shaking after being told Elena was not waking up. The caption under that image read, "Unstable emotional state." His vision blurred. "They followed me?" Whitmore looked sick. "Looks that way." Mia's voice was tiny. "Why do they have pictures of you crying?" That was the question that tore him open. Because children don't understand why pain gets used like evidence. Daniel took a step back and sat before his knees gave out. "Because some people," he said, staring at the page, "think if a man cries, he can't protect anybody." Mia crawled into his lap without a word. And that was the most heartbreaking part. She was the one in pain. Still, she was comforting him. Whitmore closed the folder. "No judge is going to remove a child from her father over grief," Vanessa said quietly. "You'd be surprised what they'll do when money is involved." Everyone looked at her. For the first time, there was something strange in her expression. Not softness, not regret. More like fatigue. Like she'd seen this kind of thing before and survived by becoming it. Daniel noticed it, but there was no room left in him to care. His phone rang. Hospital. He answered instantly. "This is Daniel." The surgeon's coordinator spoke gently, which made it worse. "Mr. Reyes, we still have no deposit confirmation. I need to know within the hour whether to release tomorrow's operating room." Daniel stood, Mia still in his arms. "Please don't release it, please. I'm fixing it right now." "Sir, I understand, but there's another child waiting for the slot." He closed his eyes. Another child. Another parent probably begging some other god for mercy. "How long?" he whispered. 45 minutes. The line went dead. Daniel leaned against the desk. Whitmore looked at the clock, then at legal, then at Vanessa. And something clicked. "You knew the deadline," he said. Vanessa didn't answer. He stepped toward her. "Your father told you exactly when that transfer had to clear." Still nothing. Whitmore's face went hard. "And you stalled him long enough to make sure it wouldn't." Vanessa lifted her chin, but her eyes were glassy now. "My father said Daniel would take the money and disappear." Mia turned in Daniel's arms. "He wouldn't." Vanessa finally looked at the child she'd frightened. Mia's voice shook, but she kept going. "He sleeps in the chair when I get scared. He burns grilled cheese but makes it anyway. He cut his hands building my school volcano because I said the red paint looked stupid. And he started over." Her lip trembled. "He wouldn't disappear." Nobody in that room moved. Mia buried her face in Daniel's neck. "He promised me." Vanessa looked away first. Whitmore exhaled once, sharply. "We're done here." He made 3 calls in under 2 minutes. The first froze Victor Hale's private accounts pending internal ethics review. The second authorized a personal guarantee in Daniel's favor, backed by Whitmore's own holdings. The third was to a family court judge he knew from a nonprofit hospital board. Not to influence, to expedite. Because the truth, when it finally gets in the room, deserves to arrive before damage becomes permanent. But even then, the story still had one more knife hidden. As legal rushed paperwork through and Treasury prepared the transfer, Daniel got another message. Unknown number. A video. He opened it and felt his blood turn to ice. It was security footage from outside his apartment building that morning. Victor Hale stood beside a black car, speaking calmly to someone off camera. Then the camera angle shifted. The someone was Mia. She held her rabbit under one arm and looked up at her grandfather as he crouched in front of her. Even without sound, Daniel knew exactly what he was seeing. A child being worked on. He turned the volume up. Victor's voice came through, smooth and poisonous. "If your daddy gets upset at the bank today, sweetheart, don't be scared. Sometimes sick people need calmer homes. If you come stay with me, you'll have your own room. No more hospitals. No more shouting." Daniel nearly dropped the phone. Mia went still against him. "You talked to her?" Daniel said, looking at Vanessa like he'd never hated anyone before in his life. Vanessa looked genuinely blindsided. "I didn't know he went to your apartment." "Of course you didn't." Whitmore took the phone, watched the clip, and his entire face changed. "Send this to legal. Now." The next hour moved like a storm. Documents, signatures, calls, camera footage, a formal complaint, an emergency hearing by video conference, a medical affidavit from Mia's oncologist confirming delay risk, a statement from Whitmore, another from branch staff who admitted Vanessa had been warned the check was authentic before Daniel even reached her desk. And then, the hardest part. The judge wanted to hear from Mia. Daniel almost refused. She was 8. She was tired. She had an IV bruise still fading on her left hand. But the attorney knelt in front of them and said softly, "She doesn't have to choose between homes. She only has to answer one question honestly." So Mia sat in that giant leather chair with her rabbit in her lap and looked into a laptop camera like it was a monster under the bed. The judge asked, "Mia, do you feel safe with your father?" Daniel stopped breathing. Mia looked at him first, then back to the screen. "He's scared all the time," she whispered, "but he still stays." Daniel bowed his head. "He thinks I don't hear him cry in the kitchen," she continued, voice trembling. "But I do. And then in the morning, he makes pancakes that are burned on one side and says they're fancy." A tiny sad smile touched her mouth. "He always stays." No lawyer could improve on that. No accusation could survive it. The emergency petition was denied on the spot. Victor Hale's request for temporary guardianship was rejected, and the judge issued an immediate no-contact order pending a harassment review after seeing the video. Vanessa sat like stone. Daniel should have felt victorious. He didn't. He felt tired enough to disappear standing up. Treasury confirmed the bridge transfer at 4:41 p.m. The hospital held the operating room. Mia's surgery was back on. And yet the deepest cut came later, when the room finally emptied and the adrenaline was gone, and Daniel found himself alone for 1 minute beside the window overlooking the city. Whitmore joined him quietly. "You should hate me too," Whitmore said. Daniel frowned. "For what?" "For becoming this," Whitmore said, gesturing vaguely at the glass, the suits, the machinery of a world that had just tried to crush him. "For not knowing what people like Hale were doing in a place with my name on it." Daniel stared out at the traffic far below. "You walked in." Whitmore swallowed. That's more than most people do. A long silence passed. Then Whitmore said, almost carefully, "Why didn't you ever call me?" Daniel smiled without humor. "You were the kid I dragged out of hell. I wasn't going to show up at your office 10 years later asking for favors." "It wouldn't have been a favor." "No," Daniel said. "That's the problem. I needed help, not debt." Whitmore looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. He understood. Some wounds don't come from being poor. They come from being pitied. The next morning, Daniel sat beside Mia's hospital bed until they wheeled her away. She squeezed his fingers weakly. "If I wake up and Grandpa Victor is there, tell him I'm busy." Daniel laughed, and then he cried, because she was making jokes on the morning she might not wake up at all. He kissed her forehead. Deal. The surgery lasted 6 hours, long enough for Daniel to relive every bad moment of his life twice. Long enough for Vanessa Hale to resign. Long enough for Whitmore National to issue a public statement and quietly begin an internal investigation into every favor ever done for Victor Hale inside those walls. Long enough for Daniel to think about Elena so intensely he could almost hear her. Not as some perfect memory, as herself. Bare feet in the kitchen, hair tied badly, laughing too loud, telling him not to teach Mia to say hell before kindergarten. At 3:17 p.m., the surgeon walked in. There are seconds that split a life in two. This was one of them. The surgeon smiled. It went well. Daniel's body gave out so fast he had to grab the chair to stay upright. He covered his face and sobbed into both hands. Not because the fear vanished, because it didn't. But hope walked back into the room, limping, bloodied, impossible. And that was enough. 3 days later, Mia woke stronger. A week later, she asked for pancakes. 2 weeks later, the video from the bank leaked. Not by Daniel, not by Whitmore. By a teller who said the world should see what humiliation looks like when it wears a name tag. Millions watched Vanessa tear up that check. Millions watched a child flinch. Millions watched a powerful man walk into the frame and call a broken-looking single dad, "Sir." But the clip alone didn't explain the whole story. So Daniel was invited to speak at a fundraiser months later, at the pediatric center being built on the very land Elena once protected. He almost said no. Then Mia looked up from the couch, missing one front tooth now, and said, "Mom would tell you to stop hiding." So he stood on a stage, in a borrowed suit, with a room full of people who would once have looked right past him, and he told the truth. Not the cleaned-up version, the real one. About how easy it is to mistake exhaustion for weakness. How quickly people judge a man by his boots, his silence, his grief. How a father can be drowning and still show up holding a lunchbox, a jacket, a hand. And then he looked at the front row, where Jonathan Whitmore sat beside Mia, and Daniel said the line that made the whole room go silent. "Money didn't save my daughter. People did. One woman trying to use money to take my child. Another system almost helped her. But in the end, the only thing stronger than power was someone deciding to stand up before it was too late." The room rose, not politely, completely. Mia clapped the loudest. Later that night, after the lights were gone and the speeches were done, Daniel and Mia stood outside under a cooling sky. The city glowed around them. Mia slipped her hand into his. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "If Mom can see us, do you think she's proud?" Daniel looked up at the dark, then down at the little girl who had survived more than most adults ever would. He knelt in front of her. "I think," he said softly, "she's proudest of you." Mia smiled, but Daniel wasn't finished. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and added, "And I think the day they tried to tear our life into pieces, they forgot something." "What?" He looked back at the building behind them, at the world that had underestimated love and nearly lost. They forgot we were still holding on. Have you ever been judged at your lowest and lived long enough to watch the truth make everyone in the room go quiet?